Okay, so we got two shows left this year. We got Michelle on Monday and the fantastic Wendy Walker's coming up on Thursday. Then we're going to take a couple weeks off. It has been a long year here in the bunker interviewing amazing writers. We've interviewed something like 85 or 90 writers this year and already into 2021, which is fantastic. But Max and I both need a break. But I will say, as we've been thinking about the future of the show, and I've talked a little bit about this, we're going to go down to one show a week starting around February of next year, just because it's so hard to pump these out. 2 shows a week takes a lot of time on top of my day job and on top of my writing. But one of the things, the conflicts that I've had is that I love doing these interviews so much. And you'll hear it today with Michelle, and I've talked about this countless times on the program. I do the hour-long format for a couple reasons. One, I'm just fucking fascinated by writers and their lives. And the more I talk to writers, the more I'm fascinated by the lives that they live. Because there are these similarities that we all have, but then these tiny differences that make us all who we are. But also it allows me to have conversations with people beyond their writing and to remind everybody that authors are authors. And yeah, we give you snapshots of things that we write, but we are so much more than what you see on the page, and that it's important to remember that with fiction and poetry and all those things, but particularly with nonfiction. And I've had this year lots of women on the program who have written memoirs or collections about sexual assault and recovery and the aftermath of all of that. And it's very easy to read those books and listen to interviews or read reviews and things that people say and only see them through that lens, or only see any of these memoirs through this lens. But since I have Michelle on the program today, I've just been thinking about Nina and Sarah and Allison and some of the people that I've had on the program this year who have written really important memoirs that are tough to read. Not because they're badly written, but because they're about horrifically terrible things that happen to people and the ways in which they navigate after. And I love doing the hour-long interview because it's so important to remember that people exist outside of their books. They exist outside of their trauma. In a tiny way, when I talk about the things that I've gone through and the trauma therapy that I'm in, that is a small part of who I am. And that is a small part of the life that I live. Now, it dominated much of the decision-making that I've made, which you've heard other people talk about that. Untreated trauma tends to engulf your entire life in lots of different ways. But that doesn't mean that you don't have these large moments where it's not dominating your life. And the conversation with Michelle today is such a great reminder of that. We spent the first 10 or 15 minutes talking about baseball, and she tells this really lovely story about why baseball is important in her life. And I don't want to ruin it for you because it's a good story. And it is a reminder that we take comfort and laugh and smile and share fellowship with people, even though traumas happen in life. And so I guess in some ways, ending the year with that discussion is important to me, just because if you go back and look at who we've talked to this year, there have been a lot of really hard nonfiction books that came out. Race, gender, all of the things that you might imagine. And I love the hour-long format. And the reason that I spend 15 or 20 hours a week producing these shows is because I love hearing the stories outside and around that trauma and through the trauma, because those are people in full. And I hope as you listen to the program and as you reflect on what you've heard here this year and as you listen to other things and read books, that that is what brings you back to the program, and that that is what you've taken away from what we've done, which is that we are large and we contain multitudes, and that's okay. That we can laugh about baseball and we can laugh about goofy things that happen and also have very serious discussions about things that have traumatized us, and know that not any one thing that we talked about defines who we are. And so I've wrestled going back and forth about, cutting back to just one show a week, just because I've had so many great discussions with everybody. And I love doing it so much, and I just think it's so important. And I love interacting with all of you on Twitter and Facebook and all of the places where we end up interacting. But mostly, I hope that what you have taken from this year is a love of these authors, a love of their stories. I hope that you have discovered new things along the way, and I hope you've had moments where you've seen yourselves in what we've said and enjoyed the meandering conversation that I have on a weekly basis, and understand that we do the hour because we are all large and we contain multitudes, and nothing that happens in our life defines who we are.